so when you're doing creative writing, you're still writing to an audience. You still have to be technically correct, grammatically correct, and you have to be interesting. It's just that the topic might be a little bit out of this world. It all depends on what you're writing about.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi, and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. My name's Rick Nuske, and I'm on the line with Willie Handler. How are you, Willie?
I'm very good. How about you?
I'm very well. I have 2 feet and a heartbeat. I can't complain. Now, we were talking a little bit offline about how the show will be a light-hearted one. So before we jump into everything that you do as an author, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I have not been an author a long time. It wasn't even wasn't necessarily one of my passions. I actually worked in the government. I'm in Canada,
right?
And I had a lengthy public service career, and did a lot of technical writing. And when I left the government about 7 years ago, I thought it would be fun to write a novel, and so I knew nothing about writing novels, and just started take a crack at it, and ended up with The Road Ahead.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's funny. I always get a lot of value, and so does the My Future Business audience, when they listen to the process behind becoming an author. Was it something that I guess came naturally to you, or was it a process that you had to learn?
I definitely had to learn it, and I would say that my first draft of the novel was pretty crappy.
like many.
If I can, I think that would be the best terminology to describe it.
Right.
So no, that I already knew how to write because I was a technical writer. I wrote a lot of policy documents for the government, but writing a novel, a fiction novel, is very different.
Yeah, I guess you have to move away from that technical side, because my background's also corporate and writing policy, procedure, all that sort of type stuff, and to go away from that and actually switch on your creative side, that's a big jump.
It is. Now, there are a lot of principles that carry over. I mean, your writing has to be grammatically correct.
Yeah.
You're writing for an audience always. If you're writing technically, you're still always writing for an audience, and it could even, and it may vary. And so when you're doing creative writing, you're still writing to an audience. You still have to be technically correct, grammatically correct, and you have to be interesting. It's just that the topic might be a little bit out of this world. It all depends on what you're writing about.
So where did the genesis for this book come from? What was the spark that, led to the point for you to decide to become an author?
When I left work, I actually retired from the Ontario government here in Canada. I was doing some consulting work in my field of specialty, and I wasn't exactly excited about it. And I just started thinking about what I really wanted to do, and I talked to a lot of friends and sort of bounced off ideas, things that I could go into. And I remember I was sitting at lunch with one very good friend I known for quite a while, and she says, "You're really a good writer. Have you ever thought about doing any creative writing?" And that's when the light bulb went off my head, and going,
yes,
yeah, that would be fun. And so that was really the genesis. And I decided for my first novel, this whole principle about, write what you know. So I decided I was going to write a humorous book about politics and politicians. And
it's already put a smile on my face.
Yeah. and there are many. This book came out a couple of years ago, and many people have commented that after they've read it is I had to check the date of this book because I thought this was you were talking about this certain politician.
Oh, it's funny because given that politics is, obviously global, I suspect that you could read this book anywhere and the same rule would apply.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. Although it's based here in Canada,
Hmm.
politicians globally are the same,
Oh, yeah.
right? The vanity, the the power, those that are power crazy, it's the whole thing about the whole persona. They're the same everywhere, and as a result, I know people who read it, and they come from different backgrounds, different cultures, and different countries, and they all can relate to it.
Yes, absolutely. Can I just touch on something I've noticed? I see that recently you were in Southeast Asia. Is that correct?
Yes, actually, that's yeah. I was I did a cruise through Southeast Asia. It was the first time there, and it was fascinating.
Yes, it's a beautiful place, isn't it?
Indeed,
And
indeed.
it's rich in culture. Did you use any of your travels around this wonderful world of ours as any inspiration for your writing?
Well, it's interesting. It, it, I was actually doing writing on the boat because we had sea days, and I would just sit up on an upper cabin overlooking the ocean,
Hmm.
and it was just set the right kind of mood. And I actually did a lot of writing on those 5 sea days.
Yeah, you can imagine, can't you? And I just went quiet for a little bit there because I'm just picturing the last time I went on a cruise, and all I could see was the beautiful horizon, and if the if the time's right, you're getting a beautiful day to just empty your mind and focus on what you need to be doing.
I mean, I think for me, when I'm writing, I need that sort of a very serene type of atmosphere to get me going,
Yeah.
and uh, and to keep me from getting distracted.
Now, I know that we touched on this earlier, Willie, about it being light-hearted. It's funny, of an evening, if I watch the news, which is seldom, I might add, I find myself, I guess, making fun of politicians and what they say, and they almost have this rock star quality about them, or at least that's what the media is doing. Talk us through some of the, I guess, the content inside of this wonderful book.
Well, part of it is, of course, is that I work within government. I work with a lot of politicians over the year,
Hmm.
and clearly the persona that you see in those little 30-second, 15-second clips on the news is very often nothing what they're like. They're like you and me. Some of them have horrible tempers, and I've seen them explode. They can be very vain, um, and and to be honest, I don't want to paint a bad picture. Some of them are very, very committed to public service, but many of them, I really question what their motives are. And although they may go in with the idea of public service, you get caught up in this whole culture, and they change.
Yes.
And I think the book tries to show what what politicians can really be like. It really features on one individual who basically was sort of dragged into running for office and with no chance of winning, but somehow ended up winning because of some stupid thing that he blurted out. Basically forced the government to change directions on a certain policy and just turn into he and the policy all just turned into a nightmare because he was inappropriate and the commitment he'd made for the government was unrealistic.
Yeah.
And that's the premise of the book.
Yeah. Yeah. And you start, I guess, having a bit of fun with it.
Absolutely. There are some outrageous scenes in that book, and the language is just a little colorful.
I love it. So, are you taking, I guess, any tidbits from, I guess, global politics in terms of what's happening in the States as opposed to what's happening in Canada and places abroad like Australia? I'm looking at the creative processes that you go through when you write a book like this.
Um, I I I remember things from 25 years ago. There, and I remember specific stupid little things that a politician got in trouble for, whether it was here locally or somewhere else. And those things are all in my head. And when I sat down and wrote, I'm going, gee, this would make a good scene in the book. I remember that guy there, and that a U.S. senator who basically got drunk and ended up in a fountain. That would be quite a good thing to. And so those are kind of things. So yeah, I took things, I took real events and kind of just fictionalized this. I changed the events a little bit to fit the book as well. There was one case where I know um, a politician. I'm not naming any names, but this politician made a big fuss about taking the shoes off, going through airport security,
Oh, really?
and basically made such a big fuss that she was carted away by security and didn't get on the plane. I changed that so that the politician involved, was a little inebriated and didn't get and wasn't allowed on the plane.
A bit of creative license, you could say.
Yeah, but so that's the kind of thing that I will do, and I have in my storage bank, I have all these little snippets of strange and inappropriate things that politicians have done over the years.
Oh, and it's a never-ending source of great content, isn't it? I suspect.
Oh, absolutely. I mean that my next book actually is nothing like this book, but I could certainly write another political satire with all that goes on. I mean, every day there's things in the news.
Yeah, you are writing another book by the sounds of things.
I am writing another book, and it is totally different. It is a satire as well,
Hmm.
but it's a sci-fi satire.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
it's the story in a nutshell is about a chef who is selected to be on the first mission to Mars, a permanent colony, and the colony blows up, and he's the only survivor,
Oh.
and he gets picked up by a pair of Martians. Nobody in NASA actually had an idea that there was life forms on Mars, but that's because they all live underground.
Oh.
And basically, it's a story about how he tries to adapt to Martian society. It's called "Loved Mars, Hated the Food."
Oh, this is wonderful. I'm also looking here at an image that's one of yours, I suspect, and you've got fake news, and I think that's become, well known globally to mean something from a certain person, which will remain nameless. But it's just a wonderful little quip on your book with the Martians there, looking at intelligent, rational life.
Yeah.
Where did you come up with the idea for such a book?
Where did I come up with that?
Yeah, I mean,
That's a really good question. I a couple sources. There was a few things playing in my mind. I wanted to do something totally different.
mm,
I wanted to get out of my comfort zone. As I said, remember the first book I wrote about what I knew about, and
yep.
this I know this is the complete opposite. So I wanted to try something a little bit more, much more, maybe a much more risque. And so I decided I was going to. There was a couple inspirations. One is the movie The Martians.
Ah, right.
For that one with and the whole thing with the potatoes. There's scenes in this book about potatoes. It's just that whole potato thing just kind of hit me.
Yeah, I've got
Uh,
a picture in my mind of it.
there are potatoes in this book.
That's awesome.
Clearly.
Clearly, how can it be without it?
Yeah, exactly. And so unlike the Weir book, which had him living alone on Mars, in my book, he's living with Martians. So it's quite different. And as well, the other thing I was trying to sort of work with, there was a 60s American TV situation comedy called My Favorite Martian.
Yes.
I think older people might remember it, but it starred Ray Walton.
Yep.
And it's where he crash lands on Earth, this Martian, and hides out with a Earthling who, if I recall, he was a reporter. I can't even remember now. And there was a snoopy neighbor, Mrs. Brown. This is what I remember. So this story, I tried to sort of emulate that, but instead of a Martian on Earth, it's an Earthling on Mars.
Right.
And there's also a Snoopy next door neighbor.
You got to have a Snoopy next door neighbor.
Yeah, always have to have one, right? Because you need to have tension, you need to have some conflict.
Yep.
And that nosy next door neighbor is always a good source.
This comes back to that, the hero of the story, and there still is I guess, a structure. And I get with the My Future Business audience, we obviously have business owners, startup entrepreneurs, and authors. Now, this is a very relevant point. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, what sort of a profile do you follow? Do you always have to have like a villain and a hero in your stories?
I think it's very important that you have to have appealing characters.
Yeah.
People aren't going to read a book if they hate everyone in the book.
Yeah.
So you have to have some appealing characters. Clearly, your protagonist has to have some appeal, and sometimes I've struggled with that because I have very flawed characters, and both in the book that's my first book, but in the one coming out, they're not exactly exemplary citizens, but they also have some appeal because you kind of feel sorry for them as well because of some of the dumb things that they do and say. So they do have redeeming character about them, but you have to also have a protagonist, somebody who. And then it's the villain isn't always the same. There's no prototype. It doesn't have to be somebody who's trying to kill them or whatever. It could just be somebody who's always trying to upend them, get under their skin.
Yeah.
Somebody who's really has bad intentions.
Yeah. And
I think because every book has to have conflict and tension. If it doesn't, it's boring. And you need to have that's what really engages, I believe, readers, is the conflict and tension that you can build in a book. And when I finish a draft, usually what I will do is I pass it on to someone and say, tell me where isn't there enough conflict, and then I start to build more around it. It's very, very important element.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is very educational for those who are, I guess, budding authors and want to learn the process. So thank you for sharing some insight into that. I'd love to just touch a little bit on the feelings that you had when you knew you had completed your first book, The Road Ahead. Could you share a little bit about how you felt?
Well, that's interesting. I would call it exhilaration. When I started this, when I started that book, I didn't even tell people I was writing. I didn't believe I could actually finish a novel. And it wasn't until I was probably about 2/3 the way through and realized I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
That I actually started mentioning people, and they were like quite surprised. Really, I didn't know you were writing a novel. And I said, well, I've sort of kept it up under wraps up to now. And like when I finished it, I didn't even know if it was any good. I just was thrilled that I was able to do it. And to be honest, it wasn't so good. Um, but but part of the writing process, you don't write one draft. You
No.
write multiple drafts, um, and and you and you make it good.
Yeah.
You can work with any manuscript and improve it and make it a readable book.
Yeah. So there's iterations.
Yeah. The other difficult thing for me is that uh, and if there's writers out there, they will know what I mean. But there are writers that are called plotters, and those are writers that spend a lot of time writing out an outline. And I know writers who spend months writing an outline before they write the book. There are those that are called pantsers, who basically don't write any outline. They sit down in front of their computer and they start typing away. They don't know, they don't even know what the whole story is. It's kind of whatever they have in their head. And then there's a sort of a hybrid where some people, actually a lot of people, have very short outlines and sort of just they sort of follow that outline, but let the book go wherever they feel they want to go as they write it.
Yeah.
I'm in that very small group called pantsers. So I sit down each day. I know the chapter I'm working on, what it's about, but I really don't know yet. I haven't really thought about what the rest of the book looks like, which for some people could be very scary.
Yeah.
It seems to work for me. So, I'm very much an organic writer.
Willie, if people want to access your books, where are they going to find you?
I am on Amazon. I don't think very many people other than Amazon sell books anymore these days.
It would seem that way, wouldn't it?
If you come to my home, you will find in my basement, it's full of empty Amazon boxes.
Amazon boxes.
If somebody needs some boxes to move, please come to my house. You can take all you want.
Well, I'm going to post all the links below this post. I might just put your address on there. No, scratch that. I won't do that at all. Willie, it's been a wonderful treat spending some time with you on the My Future Business Show today.
Thank you very much. No, thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.